Here we go.
There it is. Okay. So appreciate you guys joining. This is going to be a class on 3D print design setup. Continuation on my series of 3D printing as an ANS process. So on this one, most of my screen will be, or most of my camera time will be on the computer, because I'm going to try and cover both different types, FDM and resin printing, and setting up through your slicing programs to get the maximum efficiency. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Let me switch my camera around. Okay. So there's two types of slicing programs. This one is Simplify 3D. Let's see if that makes it better. Yeah. So this one is called Simplify 3D, and you can use it for resin printers and FDM printers. FDM printers are the ones that do the layer by layer build up from the bottom to the top. Resin printers is a vat of resin that, well, let me show you, because I have both. So this is an FDM printer. The hot end here builds up, pushes plastic through, builds up layer by layer till it reaches the height. Project's done. This is a resin printer. As you can see, I have a project working, vat of resin. The build plate goes up and down, lights come on, which you can't see. It's a UV cured resin. It cures the layer, the entire layer all at once, and then goes, as you can see, the build plate goes up and it comes back down to reset for the next layer. All right. Most resin printers use this program, which is called Chitu Box. I hope I'm saying that right. It's designed to apply supports the way they're supposed to, which are slightly different than on an FDM printer. So let's go back to the FDM printer and walk through that process. All right, so this is what's called the Venetian mask. So you've got your build volume, which is the area inside this cube. There's your build plate, there's your model. Now this model is actually, if I can do this right, this model appears to be a little small. On the right side of your screen, these are the scales, 100%. This is your orientation, and then that is your positioning. Top or up and down, left to right, forward and back. Scale is the same way, forward to back, left to right, and top to bottom. Rotation is rotate right, rotate at a 45-degree angle, and then rotate just horizontal, vertical, and then a 45-degree angle. For a mask like this, there's not a lot of supports needed because of the way it sits. It's basically flat on the bottom. If I can get it to get closer, there we go. You can see that the majority of the bottom, if not all of it, actually touches the build plate. So for this one, you would not need a lot of supports. Now, there are other masks and helmets that would require supports. And just to show you how that works. So those are your support settings. Normally, you would click to generate automatic supports, because then that tells the machine that you trust the settings. And as you can see, all of the areas that would be problematic for the print to maintain stability would get supported. Like I said, for this mask, there's not a lot of work that needs to be done. You can basically save this, print it, or send it over to the printer and start printing, and it should work out just fine. There are a few areas like here in this gap where this area, right, this archway right here might collapse in on its own weight for the first few layers. If that happens, it's something you can fix in post-processing. Also, the eyes. Sorry about that. The eyes, but you can see the supports going up to support that area. And then these little front areas. Give me one quick second, please. Sorry about that. FDM printers are actually the easier of the two, in my opinion, and a lot of other 3D print workers shared the sentiment because they are a lot easier to orient your parts to get your pieces printed properly. It's a lot of pieces. Are there any questions? I know that was a real quick run through. Is there anything that you guys want me to go through? Any other details or any like settings that you guys need me to explain any further or anything like that? The silence tells me I'm going to assume that that's enough. All right, so we'll come back to FDM printers if I remember anything that I may have forgotten. But as stated, the FDM printer is probably the easiest. If you're looking to get into printing, 3D printing or 3D print work, I would advise, if you know nothing and you want to learn like through trial and error, an FDM printer would be the way to go. It's super cheap, like a roll of filament, like one of those rolls of filament costs about 10, 15 bucks. Most places offer free shipping over a certain amount. So, and most printers you can buy for about, I think you can get a 3D printer now, an FDM printer for about $75 to $100. Sorry. Since there's no questions on FDM printing right now, I will move to resin printing. And actually, let's get a better screen. Let's hope this works. All right. So, like I said, this is Box. It's got the same build volume. That square is your, like the area which your part will be built. That your total build volume is the square. This is the build plate. Forgive me for the distance. I'm trying to do this. So you're going to import your part. Let's go with, let's go with my favorite. So, no, that's not it. There it is. So I printed this model, which is Apophis, the snake god, on my resin printer. Elegoo Mars Pro. 10 different pieces because I have a rather small build plate. So we'll just pull a few sections of the model. No, stop it. When you open your model, it sets everything on the build plate exactly as it's supposed to be set, which is in the center. You can move them around, separate the pieces. So the first thing you want to do is you want to highlight everything, and then you want to go to your layout and center everything. As you can see, my build plate is quite small. So my pieces don't fit. So we're going to remove everything but the head piece. Let's go back in here. This isn't working. All right, so we're going to remove everything but the head. First, we deselect everything. This would be so much easier if I had a tripod. And one by one, highlight all the pieces and remove them. So now we're left with the toughest piece. Nope, that's not what I wanted. To position and support, which would be the head. Just like the FDM printer or the FDM program, the resin printer program also moves everything along the 3-axis system. So the first thing you want to do is you want to rotate until all of, so as you can see there, part of it's in the red, the rest of it's blue. The red is parts that are not on they're not above the print bed itself, so they will not be printed. So you want to adjust for your print. Let's see if I remember which one's which. There we go. That's the one I was looking for. So now you can see there are no red sections. Oh, there is one. Let's try that again. There we go. Now we double check. Okay, so there's no red sections. Oh, real quick, before I go further, let me backtrack a little bit. The FDM printers are great. Okay, FDM printers are actually great for work that doesn't have a lot of detail. Resin printers are better because you can capture a lot more fine detail, especially given that it is it cures the entire layer. So fine detail like lettering or scroll work or anything like that usually come out better on a resin printer than an FDM printer, simply because the supports and the structure of the model is more aligned with that style of printer than it is for an FDM printer, than a layer by layer build-up printer. All right, and now back to the other setup. So first thing you want to do is you want to set your home orientation on your build plate, and you want to make sure that it is in the center of your screen. You have your model, make sure everything fits, give it a full 360, check the top, and then you want to scroll out just a little bit, make sure it stays centered, and you want to set it over you want to set the mouse over the slice, which is here. That brings up your build volume box. That way, because the height of your model is very important. If your model's too tall, the top of it will not print, and you'll end up with a model that's only partially done. Like I said, this one is set for the build plate. It covers the entire plate. There's no red edges, so everything is in place. Then you're going to go over to your supports. Let's go back. So if you watch the model, when I click supports, it'll lift itself up off of the build plate. That leaves room for your bottom supports, your underside supports, which would be like all of these areas, like these pointy overhangs and these drop downs, stuff like that. That's where your inner supports would be. And then this program also sets, like, I don't know if you can see it, but all those little gray dots, those are where all the supports are going to actually touch the model itself. So then you go over to this part here, and this is all basic knowledge for me because I've been printing for about a month. Now you've got your platform, which is the underneath. This is going to be this area here that's in the dark gray. That's going to push your supports up underneath all of this. And then there's you've got 3 settings. You've got light, medium, and heavy. Light supports are very thin. Medium supports are slightly thicker. And heavy supports are thicker still. You can set the shape of your support, your angles, your diameters from the top, the connection length, how far across it goes, how dense they are. You can do it for the top, the middle, the bottom, and the raft individually. If you hit platform, you'll get your basic supports already installed. Let's see. It puts everything in place. And then you've got your platform, which is just where the supports are going to be touching the build plate. If you go with all, yes, it's going to ask you if you want to do it. Now, your supports they'll look a little different. Your supports will actually support each other a lot more. And again, once you get your supports in place, you're going to go back to your original window and hit slice to make sure that your supports are inside your build window as well. Now, when you hit platform, it was just these supports down here. So the ones that went up. But in here, like inside the mouth, you'll see that there are supports. Let's get a little closer. Like these supports here, that supports the fangs and all of those things. There's a lot of areas on prints that have an underhang, like the part builds before the part that it connects to would build. So that's what those supports are going to be holding the part in place so that everything prints at the right time and in the right shape. Oh, man, don't do that. Like, as you can see, the supports holding the fangs, because when this prints, it's going to get to about right here. And then the tip of this fang is going to start printing because there's a slight dip. There's a slight curve. The same with the tongue here, and then like these points at the end at the mouse and the points on the back of the head. Once you make sure everything is squared away there, you want to adjust the positioning. So what you want to do is you want to make sure your optimum is to make sure that everything is inside the blue lines. This model being as large as it is, printed at 100% scale, you can see here and over here where it's not going to fit inside the blue lines. It's too wide. The blue lines are actually the edge of your build volume. That is not the edge of your build plate. Once it gets outside your build volume, then that is, for a resin printer, that is the size of the window that the lights are shining through to cure the resin. So the blue lines are the area that your UV lights will shine through. Once it's outside that area, no light will shine through, and obviously the resin won't cure. So those sections of that layer will not ever be produced. Sorry. Once you make sure everything is where it is supposed to be and it fits on the build plate, if it needs to be sliced or into smaller pieces or anything like that, you've done all of that work. You're gonna go ahead and hit slice, and then the program will do all of that work for you. Oh crap! Wait, no, gotta go back. Let's cancel that. Stop slicing. Forgot. So this model, let me pull a different view. No, that's not what I want either. There we go. So over here, this slider, it literally will show you layer by layer. As I pull this down, you'll see the model start to disappear. All of that is a solid, all of those are solid layers. So if you're working on the cheaper end, or with a limited budget, I should say, you don't want to print, or you don't want the UV resin to fill that entire cavity inside the head. So if you go up to the top, right next to layout, no, that's the dig hole. That's if you want to like cut a hole through the middle. Then there's a setting called hollow. Click that, tell it whether you want to hollow out the inside from the middle or from the edges. Hit start, and it will run through the entire thing as if it's writing. And as you can see, now you can actually see all the way through to the bottom of the model. It'll run through that. It'll deconstruct the model layer by layer, and it'll go all the way down to the supports, to the platform of the bed, and then the model will pop back. But now, when you drag down the slider like I did before, now it's not a solid layer, it's a hollow model. That reduces the weight, especially for things that are like fragile builds where you can't have a lot of weight hanging from it. Or, as I said before, if you are working with a limited budget and you don't want to waste resin filling up an entire cavity. So now we'll slice this and let the program do that, and then it'll pop up a window that will tell us how long it'll take to print, the volume, and all of the other details. Okay, so there's the model. That is actually what it'll look like on your print screen. So as you drag down the slicer, you can actually see how each layer is going to end up looking when as it cures. Like there's the mouth, and then the head, all the way down to the supports and the platform itself. Let's go back up to there. All right. And over here, it tells you your machine, tells you if you're using like a normal resin or what's called a washable resin or plant-based or any of those things. You can set those settings. That is how much resin you're going to use in milliliters. That's how much it's going to weigh in grams. That is how much it is going to cost to print your model with the settings that you've installed. If you're working for, like I do this as a business, so I try to keep my costs down as much as possible. To print the head of this model is going to cost me about 85 cents. And it's going to take 5 hours, 22 minutes, and 18 seconds. Sorry, excuse me. Once you get everything set up, let me switch my camera back because I have to put my arms down. All right. So once you get everything set, you would save your print. You're going to save it to a flash drive. Most resin printers, I do not know of a way, well, at least not through Chi2Box, and I've not done a lot of studying on it because it's easier for me to just use a flash drive since I have multiple computers or multiple printers running at once. I just use flash drives for all of them. Which you'll take the flash drive, you'll plug it into the resin printer, you'll use the screen, so that's a stop, pause, and then your settings. That tells you the print I'm working on now. It's got 44 minutes left. It's been printing for 4 hours and 13 minutes. And then it's layer 1120 out of 11 or out of 1323. Let's see if I can get closer so you can actually see the numbers. I don't think so. It's the reflections in the way. Anyway, and excuse my messy workshop. I'm in the process of moving things around. Once that's done and you've got it set to print, you basically can set it and forget it. You don't need to watch resin printers. You don't need to watch very often, simply due to the fact that if you're using colored resin, the part that is supposed to be curing is submerged anyway. So if you're using a clear resin, you actually can see like the light shining through and making sure that your layers are getting cured properly. If you're using an opaque resin, like a black or a white or like a red or whatever color resin you're using, a solid piece that's not safe if you're not going to run lights, you're not going to be able to see it, that it failed, until it gets past the till the area that failed gets past the resin itself. With FDM printers, you can watch those as they work and you can catch failures a lot faster, simply due to the fact that you actually get to see each layer as it's being laid down. So if, like, say you have what's called a layer shift, that's where, say, your layers are supposed to look like this, and something happens in your machine, and all of a sudden one of your layers slides out this way, or it slides forward this way. So you'll end up with like a small shelf. If you get one of those, you can fix it while it's running and try to minimize that, so that way you don't end up with this stair step situation as you go higher up, where your model, instead of being built this way, it's built this way, and each layer is separate, and it goes further and further to the left or to the front or the back or the right or whatever. Or you can also stop the print if it's too bad. Like, say you have to go and run an errand or something, you're gone about an hour and you come back, and instead of having a print that looks like this, say you're doing a statue, say a Spider-Man statue, instead of his leg, being straight up, his leg has like 13 different knee joints in it, and it kind of stair steps a little bit. You can stop that print and then figure out where the issue lies in where it failed, and fix that problem, and then restart the print, and you can save the filament. With a resin printer, you can't do that until that part that failed is above the resin line. So you won't know until anywhere between 10 to 30 minutes has gone by from the point of failure to when you can actually see it. Which is kind of one of the cons of a resin printer over an FDM printer. But again, being able to do an entire layer at once and cut down the time, because that print that I'm working on now was about 5 hours. On an FDM printer, that same print would run me about 17 hours. And I would not be able to get anywhere near the level of detail for that group of prints. I've been rattling off for about 30 minutes now. Does anybody have any questions? Or something I may have missed, or something that maybe I didn't explain well enough for you to like understand all of the aspects? I'm going to guess with silence means that I'm doing a decent job. If you have any, I know this is going to be posted to the, I want to say the Kingdom YouTube page, if I'm not mistaken. If you watch this video in the future and you have any questions, you can message me directly, or you can leave a comment below the video, and we will do our best to answer the question that you may have. And if I've gotten something wrong, feel free to post it in the comments and correct me, because like I said earlier in the video, I am not as knowledgeable about resin printers as I am with FDM printers. FDM printing I've been doing for about 5 years now, 5 or 6 years. Resin printing I've been doing for about a month, maybe a month and a half. But since there are no questions and I can't think of anything that I need to expand further, I'm going to thank you for attending and watching this video. And once again, if you have any questions, post in the comments directly, or any of our other Kinect members. There are several of us who do 3D printing, and the majority of us can expand on our answers for anything that needs to be explained, which is within our specialty. With that, thank you for joining me. Go back to your day. Enjoy the rest of your classes, and hopefully see you at work.